House will be in order. All those not having privileges of the floor, please vacate the chamber. When we departed, we were on committee substitute for HB 4074, and the gentlelady from the 51st, Delegate Walker, had the floor. Gentlelady from the 51st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've had a long recess, and I hope as each of us took that short break that we contemplated and digested the words that many of our colleagues spoke of. Our children are more than our future. They are our present, and that's why you have House Bill 4074 before you. Now, I know for those of us that are present, we're going to light up that board green. A green vote is telling our present leaders, I see you. A green vote is going to tell our children, we stand with you. A green vote is going to tell our little mountaineers, we love you. And we're going to do everything in our power to fight for you and to fight with you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 65th, Delegate Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank everybody here. That fire alarm is a understanding of what we went through. Obviously, as the year built up and we started getting better and better, something just hit us right in the middle, triggered us all the way back to zero. And then we started over again. And then we got triggered back to zero. I have a speech prepared. I can't read it. I've asked my good friend from the 66th, Delegate Espinosa, to read it for me. So without objection, Mr. Espinosa, would you read my speech for me, please?
Gentleman from the 66th.
Thank you. I'm honored to read this on behalf of my colleague from the 65th. Today, we can help thousands of maturing children in the state of West Virginia. Today, we can pass Megan's Law. As many of you know, I spent my entire off-season praying and wondering if my daughter was going to survive, wondering if her twin sister was going to lose her lifelong connection and her best friend. Shortly after the end of last session, Megan began to show the signs of an eating disorder. This disorder took control of our family and our lives. Not only was it emotionally draining Megan, but it was attacking the whole of the house. Wendy and I did not know how to handle this. We began reaching out to friends and colleagues for guidance. Nothing seemed to be working. Battles at the dinner table, battles before school, and battles after school. Battles through the summer and even on vacation. Our daughter was determined to kill herself, all over the belief of the image that she looked better emaciated. We fought with her hiding food and napkins at the dinner table, forcing herself to vomit after eating, and purposefully restricting food while increasing exercise to the levels of Olympians. We finally gave in to the fact that we were unable to assist her anymore, and we were forced to send Megan to the Center for Discovery. On September 29th, 2021, we took Megan to Discovery at 9 a.m. That day, she had a resting heart rate of 20 beats per minute. She weighed less than 90 pounds. Her organs were shutting down. She was dying. That day, Wendy and I made the most difficult decision of our lives. We were going to leave our child with perfect strangers. We were going to cut off all communication with Megan except for 30 minutes a day. Take a moment and reflect on this fact that for 23 and a half hours per day, we knew nothing of what Megan was doing. She was on suicide watch for the first week, which meant someone would sit in her bedroom and watch her sleep all night. What we did not know then was this was going to be the best thing as parents that we had ever done. The disorder began with a simple statement made by her cheer coach that she was too fat to be a flyer. At that time, she weighed 125 pounds and was 5'3", not fat in the least. This caused Megan to exercise harder and harder, but it was not working. So she went to the internet, and guess what she found? She found websites and social media channels that would teach her how to lose the weight. These sites taught Megan how to purge food, restrict, and ultimately allow the eating disorder to take over and control every piece of her life and ours. This was a fast-moving process, but one that could have been dealt with sooner if the coaches, teachers, and counselors were better trained and educated. Megan's Law would require this to be part of our educators' jobs. Are we putting all the blame on them? No. But with their help, we could have been in a better situation. Today, there are young girls and boys in our school system that are suffering from eating disorders, and they are going unnoticed by parents and school personnel. Many times, these issues, along with other mental behavioral issues, begin with simple things such as self-harm, cutting, burning, scratching, and even rubbing with a common pencil eraser. Why are kids using these tactics to control or suppress emotions? These actions are taught by peers and through the internet. We must stop this and help save our kids. Please join me in saying yes to Megan's Law. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are those further seeking recognition? If not, the question before us in the House is on passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 93 ayes, 0 nays, and 7 members absent and not voting, a majority present has voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. The clerk will report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4074 requires schools provide eating disorder and self-harm training for teacher and students.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4112 provide consumers a choice for pharmacy services.
Gentleman from the 17th, Delegate Rohrbach, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. House Bill 4112, provide consumers a choice for pharmacy services. This is the committee substitute that limits the ability of pharmacy benefit managers, hereafter known as PBMs, to restrict consumer access to pharmacies. It limits the ability of a PBM to designate drugs as a specialty drug and puts a definition and code of what is a specialty drug. The bill also restricts the ability of pharmacy benefit managers to exclude a pharmacy or pharmacist from network participation through overly restrictive licensure requirements or changing the terms of a participating pharmacy's contract without 30 days notice. This committee substitute also places some additional protections on 340B pharmacies by prohibiting the placement of administrative costs which are not required of a regular pharmacy. Finally, the provisions of this legislation will be effective after a current contract is expired or amended after July 1, 2022. That's a summary of the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I urge passage.
Those members desiring to speak on passage of the bill. Gentleman from the 29th, Delegate Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've engaged in a pattern over the last couple years of investigating PBMs. I think we should rightfully do it. I think the reading that I've done on PBMs in the last week, probably leading up to this bill, and then some of the rulemaking review sessions that the gentleman from the 15th and I have sat through, and others in this room have sat through, have revealed startling practices amongst PBMs and PSAOs and other organizations that act as a middleman between the manufacturer and the ultimate consumer of the drugs that are being prescribed by our physicians, and also the effect that it has on our hospitals and physicians of what they're able to prescribe, of prescribing a generic, prescribing a new drug, prescribing a specialty drug, as the good doctor behind me has talked about. But one of the things that I've come back to as I've looked through this problem that we have continually with the PBM issue is the Affordable Care Act. Now, the Affordable Care Act is something that, I think probably a majority of people in this room did not like. However, 100% of the people in this room have absolutely no control over. It's a federal law. It came into existence back in 2009, and it's something that we've lived under ever since. Before I became an attorney, a lot of you know that I worked in ERISA benefit plans, mainly as a retirement plan and group health insurance specialist. I worked with companies as small as a couple people up to thousands while I was in law school. And, as the Affordable Care Act came into play, I saw my options for my clients come to an end. We had benefit, we'd have companies with 15, 20 people in them that years ago in 2007, 2008, I'd be able to show them 9, 10 different options for a health insurance plan with 15 different options of PBMs and be able to offer a wide variety of deductibles and copays and different things to tailor to the needs of the small business owners in West Virginia and large business owners that I worked with in Milwaukee. And I saw that come to an end after the Affordable Care Act. I mean, effectively, the Affordable Care Act put me out of business and sent me to law school because it got down to about 2 companies, and they both cost the same thing, and they both had the same PBM, and that was about that. And the use of the planner, the insurance planner in that role went by the wayside because there was a 1,000, 1,200-page document called the Affordable Care Act that came into play that told everybody what they had to do. And believe it or not, they tell the people in this room what we have to do as well. Now, as we've gone through and we've done some of this legislation on PBMs, I, like you, have been supportive of making sure that the consumer ultimately is the one who's going to benefit the most from what we legislate here today. And I have to tell you, I'm not sure about that anymore. Because what we're getting into now with how the contract's designed, about the specialty drugs, about what drugs these formularies can include and not include, and how the contract's designed, a lot of that's controlled by the Affordable Care Act. And as I look at the legislation that we're beginning to do, of getting into the nuts and bolts of this thing, I see potential litigation. I won't even say potential. I know there's going to be litigation that attacks this law, that attacks the plans that are caught in the middle between state law and federal law and not knowing what to do. As much as we dislike and have disdain for the way these PBM contracts are designed, and I'll be the first one to grant to you, 87% of pharmacy claims are managed by 3 companies. I mean, gosh, even dealing with PEIA, which this bill doesn't address. For some reason, PEIA is left out. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If we're doing this to the private consumer, why aren't we doing it to PEIA? It's because it's going to create a fiscal note, and that's why that's not here. Well, if it's going to raise PEIA's rates, what do we think it's going to do to the private consumer? I mean, we're sitting here right now getting ready to vote on something that intentionally excludes PEIA because it will increase costs to the consumer, state employees. Well, you don't have a fiscal note for the public. You don't have fiscal note for the people sitting at home that are running a small business with 10 or 15 people that are trapped from picking from 3 companies and 3 PBMs that all have the same price because they're all controlled by the same federal legislation that we have no ability to change. So we keep trying to change the color of the car, but we're all driving the same car. And it doesn't matter what color it is, it's still coming out the same way. What we are getting into is litigation. I'm not talking about the litigation that, you know, the tort reformers of the world get worried about where guys like me sue people. I'm talking about the big boys. I'm talking about lawyers that come in at $1,200 an hour from New York and D.C. and go against our local companies and our local health plans that are trying to comply with state and federal law at the same time, and we're creating a situation where they can't. And I am supportive of the general concept of what this legislation seeks to do. But what it ultimately does is puts us in a position of creating high-dollar, high-end litigation that draws in big-time out-of-state lawyers that know how this stuff works. And it's not just going to be on the defense side, it's going to be on the plaintiff's side. But the plaintiffs are not me and the other trial lawyers that are denigrated so often in here. It's CVS's lawyers. It's Express Scripts lawyers, and they cost a whole lot of money. And we're going to see a lot of assets and a lot of resources of our consumers get burned up litigating this issue that we're getting ready to vote on right here. And I'm not saying I'm voting no because I don't want to help the consumer. I want to help the consumer. You know, I look at what I was presenting to clients 10, 12, 15 years ago. Oh my goodness, it was a quarter of the cost of what I would show them today if I was still in that business. I mean, it's a quarter. An absolute quarter. It was peanuts compared. I could look at business owners around here that have been in business for over 20 years, and I could see heads nodding. You know what I'm talking about. You used to look at health insurance renewals that were a couple $100 per employee. Now you're looking at thousands of dollars per employee. You can't even offer a deductible below $2,500 because of what this Affordable Care Act has done to you. And I commiserate with you. But at the same time, I cannot continue meddling in state law on a federal issue and just setting up litigation that's getting ready to happen. I think we need to take a harder look at this. And I think at some point we've got to look at our federal legislators, and I wish our senator was still in here from earlier today, because I think he's the kind of guy that would take this up and run with it. We've got to get into the nuts and bolts of what happened in the ACA that turned these 3 behemoths into companies worth trillions of dollars combined. The annual profit is over $200 billion for these 3 companies. $200 billion. Guys, we will debate $1 million in here. That's a drop in the bucket. They make that in a second of claims. And we are starting to meddle in that. And we won't even do it to PEIA because it produces a fiscal note. What does that tell you? This legislation is raising premiums. No way about it. If it will raise PEIAs, it's going to raise the private consumers. Again, I am not a no because I don't agree with the premise. I'm a no because we're not thinking about the ultimate consequences. And thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 59th, Delegate Reed.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand up absolutely for this bill. While I agree that what I don't know what district it is over there, but the chair of Gov Org says on some of these things, I disagree wholly on about how this is going to affect the consumer. This bill is all about bringing prices down. 80% of all the drug profits in the pharmacy world are made in 20% of the drugs, and almost all of those are considered specialty drugs. And the reason why they're so high is because they control the vertical chain of command from the beginning to the end. The only way to break that hold is somebody, some state, is going to have to break that hold. This is first of its kind legislation in this state. Last year we passed 2263. Medicare picked up some of that language. That's how good of a bill it was to pass on those rebates, quote rebates, to the consumer at the point of sale. And it all starts with the Office of Insurance Commission. This bill takes it a step farther. It breaks into that mechanism that these companies who are vertically integrated use to keep those prices high. There's no competition with the system that's set up. It absolutely will save patients money in the long run. You have to start somewhere, and this is definitely where to start. West Virginia can be first in the nation to break that hold, and it's going to be broken eventually. I'd like to see West Virginia be the first one to do it. Thank you very much, and I firmly go for this bill. Thank you.
Are there those seeking further recognition? Gentleman from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to close on this by echoing my friend's comments that just spoke. This bill is all about consumer choice. It's about helping your local pharmacies. Let's kind of break up some of this, but 2263 was just alluded to. That was very big legislation that was pushed through this legislature last year and signed into law. I've spoken at 2 national meetings about that bill. I think the majority leader's been asked to speak some places as well. One of the things that the Health Committee of this House has taken very seriously is trying to bring down the cost to consumers on prescription drugs. We're going to consider a bill on second reading here in just a few minutes. I know the day's been long for all of us, but I would assure you that this bill is a consumer-driven bill, because I do agree with my chairman, my friend from government organization. This is way too dominated by way fewer players. This is a way to get a few more players on the field. As far as the specialty drugs, this is a brand new definition. Specialty drug means a drug which is subject to restricted distribution by the Food and Drug Administration or is otherwise used to treat chronic and complex or rare medical conditions requiring special handling or administration, provider care coordination, or patient education that cannot be provided by a non-specialty pharmacy or pharmacist. So this says, except for these rare drugs that are now defined, your local pharmacist can compete, and your constituents have an option. Mr. Speaker, urge passage.
Question before the House is on passage of the bill. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there being 81 ayes, 13 nays, 6 members absent, a majority present having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4112, provide consumers a choice for pharmacy services.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title read by the clerk shall remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4113, public health definitions and powers of Secretary and Commissioner.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 17th to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. Before us now for consideration is House Bill 4113, public health definitions and powers of the Secretary and Commissioner. The committee substitute seeks to modernize public health in West Virginia. The Secretary of DHHR, the Commissioner, and her staff from the Bureau of Public Health collaborated with the West Virginia Association of Local Health Departments and the Joint Standing Committee for Health and Human Resources of this legislature to develop this legislation. This group focused on the modernization of public health, addressing gaps in public health infrastructure, and developing a strategy for ensuring the delivery of core public health services in all parts of the state. These meetings took place during the 2021 interim period. Now, I do apologize, this is going to be a bit lengthy because this is a long bill, but we're going to go through what this bill seeks to do. The bill, first of all, removes defined terms no longer used and cleans up rulemaking authority. The requirement of the commissioner to have a 4 years experience in health services administration or related field is removed. He or she is still required to be a licensed physician or to have a doctoral degree in public health. It removes provisions concerning the creation of a program for the care and treatment of individuals with substance abuse disorder. This was generally authoritative language which has been superseded by the creation of the Office of Drug Control Policy. Now we're going to get into the big part. It requires the Bureau to create a Center for Local Public Health. The center is specifically statutorily declared to do the following. Number one, enhance the quality and availability of essential public health services throughout the state provided by local boards of health. 2, provide technical assistance and consultation to a local board of health. 3, allocate and distribute funding based on performance-based standards. 4, establish a uniform statewide computer system for the reporting of public health data. 5, enforce compliance with performance standards. The bill also, the committee substitute also removes a cross-reference which placed the State Board of Health on the Board of Medicine. The commissioner is not removed from the Board of Medicine, which that is prescribed in the Board of Medicine article. It also expands the ability of the commissioner to have his or her designee serve on the board. It removes the ability of the state health officer for setting the schedule of fees for local boards of health. This authority is now granted to the authorizing body of the local board of health. It expands the ability of the commissioner to provide for a technical and specialized instruction for training of his or her employees. All local boards of health will be required to meet at least 6 times a year. It adds the required services that all local health departments shall provide, including immunizations and threat preparedness. It removes the requirement that a local health officer be approved by the commissioner. That approval is now done by the local governing body. It also adds the ability for APRNs and physician's assistants to serve as local health officers if approved by the appointing authority. That's a summary of the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I urge adoption.
Are there members wishing to speak on passage of the bill?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman.
Would the chairman yield for a question?
Gladly.
When you mentioned creating the Center for Rural Health, can you explain to us if this is a new bureaucracy and how that is paid for?
Well, it is not. It is an existing body that we're now giving some statutory definition to exactly what it's supposed to be, and it's already paid for by an assessment that each public health department makes in order to provide funding for this. So we're just simply defining in code what the requirements are for this board. I would think of it something like for those of you that have been around for a while, when we dissolved the REISs and we set up the collaboratives in education for the county school boards. In essence, this is a collaborative for our county health departments to get help with grant writing and things that they can't do themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speak to the bill. Thank you. I'd like to speak in favor of this bill. Over the past year, as we've seen the public health crisis occur with the pandemic, we gathered all the health departments together and we said, what can we do to make you operate more efficiently? We saw what a crisis did to them. I mean, it brought them to their knees. But just to function in a in ordinary times, what do we need to do as a state to help you do better? And this is a year-long process of meetings that we've had where we have set up what are the basic things that every health department is going to be able to provide in every county or locale where they are. So I would ask for your approval of the bill.
Gentlelady from the 38th, Delegate Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I apologize for asking this question, but I wasn't involved in the meetings. I don't know the answer to it. So would the Chair of Health kindly yield?
Yes, gladly.
So I just want to make sure for my own peace of mind, like when I was looking through some of the changes that are contained in this bill, I'm worried that we're expanding authority maybe unduly. So like, and just simple things, like even with the definition, so 16.1.2, lines 2 through 5. So just even in the definition of basic public health services, it says, the existing text says basic public health services means those services that are necessary to protect the health of the public. And then it went on to define the areas in which that would apply, and that's stricken out. So we did have a definition in there that contained the authority to certain things, 3 things, and that's stricken out. So now basic public health service means whatever is determined to be necessary to protect the health of the public. Now, I know that doesn't sound like much, but I'm also looking at a couple of the other changes that were, I'm almost to it. So 16.1.3, powers and duties of the Secretary, lines 2 through 4. So all powers and duties of the, this is stricken, by the way, all powers and duties of the Director of Health previously established by former Section 10 of this article that are not specifically included in this chapter as powers and duties of the Commissioner are powers and duties of the Secretary. Like, can you just help me understand, are we greatly expanding the authority of this body beyond what it had before?
I don't believe that to be the case. I think what we're really defining is what we want our local health departments to do. One of the things that we heard, and I will, for anyone that wants, there are 2 reports that the DHHR and our committee put together and what is needed. And we need some standardization. That came across loud and clear from restaurants, nursing homes, people that operate under these rules that the health departments put out. There was no standardization from county to county. So again, the 5 things that I enumerated are really what we want our health departments all to do. So we're expecting a more standardized product, but we're setting up this. It's not new, as the majority leader said, it's there, but we're enumerating their powers to go back and ensure that all the health departments are meeting the minimum standards. But we're not, there's no punishment, there's help. We want to help them all get to an acceptable minimum standard of services that all the citizens in all 55 counties in the state of West Virginia deserve and should expect.
In your opinion, is there any way in which we're abrogating the power of the legislature to kind of set these terms and what it can do? Is there anything we're taking away from the power of the legislature and investing in this body to do that formerly we had the power to decide?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there those seeking further recognition? If not, the question before us is on passage of the bill. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. There being 94 yeas, 0 nays, 6 absent, the majority present, the bill has passed. Clerk will report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4113, public health definitions and powers of Secretary and Commissioner.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title read as the clerk will remain the title of the bill. Gentlelady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill take effect from passage.
Question before the House is on effective from passage. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 93 ayes, 1 nay, 6 members absent, 2/3 elected, voting in the affirmative, I declare the motion passed. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Are there further bills on third reading? Bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4252 to reduce copay cap on insulin and devices.
Are there amendments? Bill be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4276, permit WVU to create a Parkinson's disease registry.
Are there amendments? Bill be advanced. Further bills on second reading. Bills on first reading. Leaves of absence. Gentlelady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For our colleagues, delegates Ellington, Storch, Pack, and Hanshaw.
Without objection, leaves be granted. Introduction of guest. Miscellaneous business. Gentlelady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, subject to announcements, the House adjourn until 11 a.m. Wednesday, January 26th.
Are there announcements? Gentlelady from the 38th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Republicans will caucus in this chamber immediately upon adjournment.
Gentleman from the 16th, Delegate Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I tried to do this under miscellaneous business, but I would ask unanimous consent that the words spoken in debate by each member on the passage of House Bill 4074, that being Megan's Law, be recorded in the appendix of the journal.
Without objection. Gentleman from the 32nd, Delegate Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Judiciary will meet tomorrow, 3 p.m. in the committee meeting room. The agenda will be posted.
Gentleman from the 48th, Delegate Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Fire Departments and Emergency Medical Services will meet at 1 p.m. on Wednesday, January 26th in the House Education Committee room. Please bring your computers, and the agenda has been posted.
Gentleman from the 51st, Delegate Statler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will meet tomorrow, Wednesday, January 26th at 4 in the Education Committee room. The agenda is posted. In addition, the Republican members of the Education Committee will caucus tomorrow in the Chairman's office at 3 p.m.
Gentleman from the 16th, Delegate Mant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Small Business, Entrepreneurship, and Economic Development will meet Wednesday, January 26th at 1 p.m. in the House Judiciary Committee room, and the agenda will be posted. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 54th, Delegate Hott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Banking and Insurance will meet Wednesday, January the 26th at 9 a.m. in the House Finance Committee room. The agenda will be posted.
Gentleman from the 15th, Delegate Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Government Organization will meet tomorrow at 3 p.m. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. in the House Government Organization Committee room, and additionally, there will be a public hearing on House Bill 2882 on Friday at 9:30 in the House chamber. That's Friday at 9:30 in the House chamber.
Delegate from the 7th, Delegate Barnhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Workforce Development will meet tomorrow at 1 p.m. in the Government Organization Committee room, and the agenda will be posted.
Gentleman from the 45th, Delegate Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Political Subdivisions will be meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, January 26th at 9:30 a.m. in the House Judiciary Committee room. The agenda will be posted. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 40th, Delegate Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Health and Human Resources will meet in the Gov.org Committee room at 4 o'clock. Republican caucus will meet at 3:45 in the Vice Chair's office.
Gentleman from the 8th, Delegate Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Energy and Manufacturing will meet in the House Judiciary Committee room 15 minutes after the conclusion of the Republican caucus today. The agenda is lengthy. The sooner we get started, the sooner we will be over. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 6th, Delegate Kelly.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on the Treatment and Prevention of Substance Abuse will not meet tomorrow.
Gentleman from the 46th, Delegate Berghammer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Faith First Caucus will meet at 9:45 in the morning in the Governor's Conference Room and every Wednesday until the conclusion of session. Hope you can join us. Thanks.
Gentleman from the 25th, Delegate Painter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Ag and Net Resources will meet at 8 a.m. Wednesday, January 26th in the Gov.org Committee room. Please bring your computers.
Gentleman from the 37th, Delegate Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Democratic members of the Health and Human Resources Committee will meet in my office at 3:45. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 35th, Delegate Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow at noon in the House Judiciary Conference Room, we're going to have a presentation by Data Robot. It will be hosted by the Tech Caucus. There will be food. I would encourage you to attend if you have time. It'll be an interesting presentation on AI and the optimization of data and growing the economy right here in West Virginia. Noon tomorrow, House Judiciary. Please join. Thanks.
Gentleman from the 29th, Delegate Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a slight correction on the public hearing for Friday for House Bill 2882. That will be moved to 10 a.m. and the reason being we'll have a lot of seats out here for the State of the State that need to be removed that morning. So 9:30 being a little early, we're going to move it to 10 a.m. And I just cleared that with the clerk, so we're good to go. Thank you.
Are there further announcements? If not, the question is on the motion for the House to adjourn until 11 a.m. on Wednesday. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the House adjourned.